They look beautiful. They smell fresh. Some are even praised for being natural and eco-friendly. Yet, hidden beneath the soil and behind the walls, they may be silently destroying the very place you call home. Today, we reflect on 3 innocent-looking plants that many people proudly grow, unaware that they may be inviting damage, expense, and regret. This is not just about plants, it's about a lesson much deeper than roots and walls. Listen carefully. Appearances can be deceptive, and this is a reality we often forget because the human eye is easily impressed. We trust what looks calm, what looks polished, what looks harmless on the surface. A smiling face convinces us of sincerity, a beautiful exterior convinces us of safety, and something familiar convinces us that there is no danger nearby. Yet history, life, and even our personal experiences repeatedly show us that the greatest harm often comes wrapped in comfort and beauty. What looks gentle may carry sharp consequences, and what seems small may grow into something overwhelming. When we judge only by what we see, we leave ourselves vulnerable to what lies beneath, because truth is not always loud, and danger is not always ugly. Many times deception does not come to attack us, it comes to settle quietly. It blends into our environment, earning our trust slowly, asking for no resistance. We allow it because it doesn't feel urgent, because it doesn't cause immediate pain, because it looks manageable. But slow damage is the most dangerous kind, as it goes unnoticed until repair becomes difficult. Just as a tiny crack in a wall may seem insignificant at first, it widens over time, weakening the entire structure. In the same way, small compromises, overlooked warnings, and ignored signs quietly reshape our reality. What we tolerate today becomes what controls us tomorrow, not through force, but through familiarity. There is wisdom in learning to look beyond the surface, to question gently, to observe patiently. Not everything that shines is meant to stay, and not everything that feels comfortable is meant to remain. Growth requires discernment, and protection requires awareness. When we become too relaxed with what surrounds us, we stop guarding what matters most. We forget that responsibility is not only about reacting to visible danger, but also about preventing hidden harm. This awareness is not rooted in fear, but in wisdom, understanding that life rewards those who think before damage occurs, rather than those who rush to fix what has already collapsed. When we train ourselves to see deeper, we begin to understand that deception is rarely dramatic. It is subtle, gradual, and often disguised as something beneficial. It waits for neglect, feeds on delay, and thrives on assumptions. By the time its impact becomes visible, it has already taken hold of the foundation, altering stability in ways that cannot be undone easily, reminding us that what we allow without reflection can quietly decide the strength or weakness of everything we build. Slow damage is the most dangerous because it does not demand attention. It does not arrive with urgency, noise, or sudden loss. Instead, it creeps in silently, giving the illusion that everything is still under control. When harm happens slowly, the mind adjusts to it, normalizes it, and learns to live with it. What should have alarmed us becomes routine, and what once felt uncomfortable begins to feel familiar. This is why slow damage is often ignored, not because it is harmless, but because it is patient. It waits while we delay, while we assume there is time, while we tell ourselves that tomorrow will be better. One of the most dangerous aspects of slow damage is that it disguises itself as stability. There is no immediate collapse, no visible destruction, no clear moment where one can say, "This is where it all went wrong." Instead, it weakens foundations little by little. Just like erosion shaping rock over years, slow damage reshapes lives, habits, and environments without resistance. A small neglect becomes a repeated neglect. A minor compromise becomes a permanent one. Over time, the cost of repair grows heavier, not because the problem suddenly appeared, but because it was allowed to grow unchecked. Slow damage also thrives on excuses. We convince ourselves that the issue is too small to matter, too common to worry about, or too inconvenient to address. We postpone action because the consequences are not immediate, forgetting that delay itself is a decision. Every moment of inaction allows the damage to deepen its roots. What could have been corrected with minimal effort eventually demands sacrifice, struggle, and regret. The danger lies not in the size of the damage at the beginning, but in the length of time it is allowed to exist. Perhaps the most tragic part of slow damage is the moment of realization. When the effects finally surface, they often appear overwhelming and irreversible. People then wonder how something so small led to such great loss, forgetting that nothing collapses all at once. It collapses layer by layer, choice by choice, silence by silence. Slow damage does not destroy because it is powerful, but because it is tolerated, and because it was never confronted when it was still weak enough to be stopped. Neglect leads to regret, because what we ignore today does not disappear. It waits. It waits quietly in the background, gathering strength while we turn our attention elsewhere. Neglect is rarely intentional harm, yet its consequences can be just as severe. It begins with small oversights, moments when we choose convenience over responsibility, delay over action. We convince ourselves that what we are ignoring is not urgent, not serious, not worth our immediate concern, but neglect has a way of keeping records, and every missed opportunity to care becomes a future burden to carry. Over time, neglect transforms from a minor issue into a defining problem. The danger lies in how gradually this transformation occurs. There is no sudden warning, no dramatic shift that forces awareness. Instead, neglect blends into routine, making us comfortable with less attention, less effort, and less care. Relationships weaken when they are not nurtured, trust fades when it is not protected, and responsibilities collapse when they are not maintained. What once required a small act of care eventually demands great effort to repair, if repair is still possible at all. Regret does not arrive suddenly either. It grows alongside neglect, quietly forming beneath the surface. When the consequences finally become visible, regret appears heavy and consuming. It carries the painful realization that the damage could have been prevented, that the loss was not inevitable, that action was possible earlier. Regret is often not about what we did wrong, but about what we failed to do when we had the chance. The weight of regret is intensified by the knowledge that time, once lost, cannot be recovered. Neglect teaches harsh lessons because it reveals how responsibility cannot be postponed without cost. Every area of life requires care, attention, and consistency. When these are withdrawn, decay follows naturally. Neglect does not need intention or malice to cause destruction. It only needs silence and delay. It thrives when awareness is absent and accountability is avoided. What begins as indifference slowly reshapes outcomes, turning manageable situations into irreversible ones, and simple responsibilities into lifelong reminders of what happens when care is withheld. Responsibility begins at home because the foundation of discipline, awareness, and accountability is formed in the spaces we consider familiar and safe. Home is where habits are built, where values are practiced daily, and where character is shaped away from public eyes. It is easy to speak about responsibility in the wider world while neglecting it in our immediate surroundings. Yet the smallest duties we fulfill at home often reflect how we approach greater obligations beyond it. When responsibility is ignored in private spaces, it weakens our ability to uphold it elsewhere, because consistency is born from what we practice daily, not what we display occasionally. At home, responsibility is not enforced by pressure or expectation from others. It is guided by conscience. There are no crowds to impress, no applause for doing what is right, and no immediate consequences for neglect. This is why it becomes the truest test of character, whether it is maintaining order, protecting what has been entrusted, or caring for those within our space. Responsibility at home requires intention. It demands effort even when no one is watching. When we become careless with small duties, we slowly train ourselves to overlook larger ones, developing a mindset where accountability becomes optional rather than essential. The home also serves as a mirror, reflecting the outcomes of our choices over time. A well-maintained environment reveals attentiveness, while disorder often signals neglect. This principle extends beyond physical spaces into emotional and moral responsibilities. When communication is ignored, misunderstandings grow. When care is delayed, distance forms. Responsibility is not limited to tasks. It includes presence, consistency, and the willingness to address issues before they become problems. What is left unattended within the home often shapes long-term consequences that reach far beyond its walls. Understanding that responsibility begins at home shifts the way we view effort and ownership. It reminds us that true accountability is not situational, but constant. The habits formed in these private moments influence how we treat commitments, relationships, and trust elsewhere. A person who learns to respect their immediate environment develops the discipline to respect greater responsibilities. When responsibility is embraced at home, it strengthens integrity, builds awareness, and creates a foundation where care and accountability become a natural part of daily life rather than a forced obligation. Awareness is a form of protection because it allows us to recognize danger before it demands rescue. When we are aware, we are not easily surprised, misled, or overwhelmed. Awareness sharpens perception and slows impulsive reactions, giving us the ability to assess situations rather than simply endure them. Many forms of harm succeed not because they are powerful, but because they go unnoticed. When awareness is absent, vulnerability increases, and when it is present, even small actions can prevent significant loss. Protection is often misunderstood as something physical or forceful, yet awareness works quietly and effectively. It does not confront danger head-on, it avoids it altogether. By observing patterns, noticing changes, and questioning what feels unusual, awareness builds a mental shield. It allows us to see warning signs where others see normality. Whether in decisions, environments, or relationships, awareness creates distance between impulse and action. That pause is where protection exists, because it prevents us from walking blindly into situations that could have been avoided. Awareness also protects by promoting responsibility. When we are conscious of our surroundings and choices, we become accountable for them. We no longer rely on excuses or ignorance to justify outcomes. Awareness encourages proactive behavior, urging us to act early rather than respond late. It transforms prevention into a habit rather than an emergency response. The more attentive we become, the less power harm has over us, because it cannot grow freely in a space that is being observed. Another strength of awareness lies in its ability to expose slow damage. Gradual harm often escapes attention because it blends into routine, but awareness disrupts this comfort. It questions what has become normal and examines whether it is healthy or harmful. Through awareness, we learn to identify shifts in balance before collapse occurs. It reminds us that safety is not found in ignorance but in understanding, and that vigilance is not fear but wisdom. Awareness protects not by eliminating all risk, but by reducing the cost of risk through timely recognition and thoughtful action. Awareness is a form of protection because it allows us to recognize danger before it demands rescue. When we are aware, we are not easily surprised, misled, or overwhelmed. Awareness sharpens perception and slows impulsive reactions, giving us the ability to assess situations rather than simply endure them. Many forms of harm succeed not because they are powerful, but because they go unnoticed. When awareness is absent, vulnerability increases, and when it is present, even small actions can prevent significant loss. Protection is often misunderstood as something physical or forceful, yet awareness works quietly and effectively. It does not confront danger head-on, it avoids it altogether. By observing patterns, noticing changes, and questioning what feels unusual, awareness builds a mental shield. It allows us to see warning signs where others see normality. Whether in decisions, environments, or relationships, awareness creates distance between impulse and action. That pause is where protection exists, because it prevents us from walking blindly into situations that could have been avoided. Awareness also protects by promoting responsibility. When we are conscious of our surroundings and choices, we become accountable for them. We no longer rely on excuses or ignorance to justify outcomes. Awareness encourages proactive behavior, urging us to act early rather than respond late. It transforms prevention into a habit rather than an emergency response. The more attentive we become, the less power harm has over us, because it cannot grow freely in a space that is being observed. Another strength of awareness lies in its ability to expose slow damage. Gradual harm often escapes attention because it blends into routine, but awareness disrupts this comfort. It questions what has become normal and examines whether it is healthy or harmful. Through awareness, we learn to identify shifts in balance before collapse occurs. It reminds us that safety is not found in ignorance, but in understanding, and that vigilance is not fear, but wisdom. Awareness protects not by eliminating all risk, but by reducing the cost of risk through timely recognition and thoughtful action. Everything has consequences, whether they are immediate or delayed, visible or hidden. Every action, every word, and every decision sets something into motion, even when it feels insignificant at the time. Often, people associate consequences only with major choices, forgetting that small, repeated actions carry equal weight over time. What we choose to do consistently shapes outcomes more powerfully than occasional effort. Life operates on a system of cause and effect, where nothing exists in isolation and no choice remains without impact. Many consequences do not appear right away, which is why they are underestimated. When results are delayed, the connection between cause and effect becomes easy to ignore. This delay creates the illusion of freedom from accountability, encouraging carelessness and complacency. Yet delayed consequences are often the most intense because they accumulate quietly. Just as interest grows unnoticed until it becomes overwhelming, the effects of repeated behavior build until they demand attention. When consequences finally surface, they often feel sudden, even though they were forming over time. Consequences also extend beyond the individual making the choice. Decisions influence environments, relationships, and future opportunities in ways that are not always predictable. A moment of neglect can affect trust, a moment of carelessness can alter direction, and a moment of discipline can prevent years of difficulty. Understanding that consequences ripple outward encourages a deeper sense of responsibility. It reminds us that our actions are not isolated events, but contributions to a larger chain of outcomes that continues long after the moment has passed. Recognizing that everything has consequences brings clarity to daily life. It encourages intentionality and discourages impulsiveness. This awareness does not limit freedom, it defines it. When people understand the weight of their choices, they learn to act with purpose rather than habit. Consequences are not punishments by default, they are results. Whether they bring growth or regret depends on the choices that produced them, and those choices are shaped by awareness, discipline, and the willingness to think beyond the present moment. My brothers and sisters, when we reflect on everything that has been shared, a single truth becomes clear. Nothing in life is random, and nothing is without impact. What appears harmless can carry hidden harm. What progresses slowly can cause the greatest damage, and what is neglected will eventually demand attention through regret. Responsibility is not something we pick and choose. It begins in the smallest spaces of our lives and extends outward, shaping everything we touch. Awareness stands as a shield, protecting us not by removing challenges, but by helping us recognize them before they grow beyond control. Every choice, every allowance, every delay carries consequences, whether we see them now or much later. When we learn to look deeper, act earlier, and take ownership of what we allow to grow around us and within us, we begin to protect our foundations, preserve what we have been entrusted with, and live with wisdom rather than reaction.